Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios talking about the Prime Minister's speech at the United Nations General Assembly's 76th session. I think a very comprehensive, very detailed one, and I think he almost touched upon all the important happenings all around the globe, whether it's about the climate change, whether it's about the Kashmir issue, whether it's about the current Afghan situation or Islamophobia perhaps, and so on and so forth. And there was a detail of areas which he touched upon and gave a very comprehensive, interactive, I would say, a kind of a speech which has raised a lot of questions all around the globe. One interesting part is that I was going through an article and where there was this comparison of the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, and people were saying, why is this man so much loved? Why is he always, sort of overwhelming? Why people love to hear what he says? Because whatever he says, he means it. And this is how things are progressing. The kind of, I would say, image our Prime Minister is carrying, that is pretty nice, I would say. But still, a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, a lot of issues have also been raised, and especially when we talk about the overall situation inside Pakistan, whether it is about the economy or otherwise. So before I introduce you to our panelists of our program, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that, and after that there is an interesting soundbite also. We'll make you hear that also.
Prime Minister Imran Khan's fearless and assertive speech in United Nations General Assembly's 76th annual session amplified overtly all the foreign policy directions and roadways which Pakistan will follow in the international arena in the future. Afghanistan, which has now earned a badge of becoming a ground for a new great game, was the main point of the focus in Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech. Imran Khan's bold and critical approach regarding strategic blunders of the world's power was a core point in his speech, which answered all those international political entities who keep on blaming Pakistan for the Afghanistan issue. Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech cemented Pakistan's unflinching perspective on supporting Afghanistan and making it a constructive entity in the region as well as in the international political and economic domains. Imran Khan showed his concerns regarding the humanitarian crisis which is looming in Afghanistan and which can lead Afghanistan to become again the haven of the international terrorist entities and groups. Hence, Imran Khan's speech gave a wholesome approach to the international community and organizations to make Afghanistan a traditional as well as non-traditionally secure state which will not only ensure a peaceful region but a peaceful world. This speech was an eye-opener for all the champions of the humanitarian international laws which after the Cold War always advocated human security as a core element of the global security.
You cannot waste time. Help is needed there. Humanitarian assistance has to be given there immediately. And the Secretary General of the United Nations has taken bold steps. I urge you to mobilize the international community and move in this direction.
Now, to talk about this, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us on my right is Lieutenant General retired TALAT MASOOD Saab. Needs no introduction, is a senior analyst, a senior columnist, sir. Thank you so much for your time, General Saab. And we also have with us HASSAN Khan Saab, expert on Afghan affairs. Khan Saab, pleasure to have you. And we'll also be talking to Begum ABIDA Hussain Saiba. She'll be joining us at around 8:20, 8:25. Gentlemen, you just saw what the Prime Minister said. Now, a couple of very important areas. Talking about Afghanistan, he emphasized on two very major areas. One is health, sir, and the other is food security. Now, these are the two major areas I think unfortunately are being totally neglected by the Western world. On one side, they sort of give you a support of, let's say, 1.2 billion, but on the other hand, sir, they're freezing your accounts also. So I fail to understand, should we call it a double standard? Should we call it a wait and see strategy? Or should we believe in Blinken's statement where he says that the Taliban will have to do this first and then in return we'll do this, rather than supporting them and kind of making them adjust with the current environment and making sure that they should not become failures and support them. That support seems to be missing also, sir. So is it is a question like whether it should be the egg first or the chicken? Your take on that, sir?
Well, I think you have raised the real question. Actually, the point here is that the people of Afghanistan should not be punished, because they are really suffering. They have suffered so much in the last 42 years, and especially for the last 20 years, and still continue to suffer. So I think you should look at the people of Afghanistan and try to ameliorate and reduce their suffering. And that can only be done if you really continue to sort of ensure that they get what you are saying, that they get the supplies, that they are not with, their funds are not frozen, and because otherwise a majority of the people of Afghanistan will have to face starvation, as they are saying.
And then refugee crisis, sir.
And they are one of the poorest nations in the world. And for last 42 years, as I said, they have been suffering. You don't want to make their suffering continue forever.
Absolutely.
So I think you have the international community and also the Western world, and especially the US, has a major responsibility, because it has been involved in the affairs of Afghanistan for the last so many years. And many of the ill effects at the moment are due to the policies that have been pursued both by America, US, and also by Russia and other countries. So I think they need to be extra sort of benevolent towards Afghanistan, and it is and the people of Afghanistan are crying for genuine sort of assistance. Pakistan is also in a very difficult position, because Pakistan is determined to sort of help, as you very rightly mentioned, that the Prime Minister has been raising his voice for the people of Afghanistan. And we can do as much as we could, but we are a poor country. We also have a
limited
problems.
capacity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all these factors do point towards the fact that the West has to, and especially America, has to review its policy towards Afghanistan, and also, of course, towards Pakistan.
I think that is a very important point raised by General Saab. Now, Khan Saab, whenever there is a crisis situation, whether because of the earthquake or a tsunami, or perhaps something similar, look what happened in Haiti for that matter, because of a cyclone. So the emergency, support has to be there. For example, people would need medicine, people would need medical facilities other than that, food, clean drinking water, security on top. I mean, there's so many factors attached. Now, over here, sir, we don't see this ASAP formula or perhaps doing something on war footing. I mean, don't you think this issue should be tackled on war footing? The way the progress was made for the peace process in the past, don't you think this is the time when everything has been sorted out? This is where they need it.
Thank you very much, Faisal. I think as I'm looking at this Taliban government and the world response, particularly the US and the West response to it, it is more a political one than a humanitarian one. The reason is there is a widespread narrative that the Taliban have defeated the West and the forces led by the US. So this narrative is very widespread, and I think it has a psychological impact. And now they are trying to punish
and
Taliban.
the Americans cannot digest this.
I think that is an issue. But let me first, I think, appreciate what the Prime Minister has said extempore in this UNGA session. The way, the passionate appeal he made for Afghans, I think no other world leader has done that. And that's the reason that there was an impact. This speech has an impact. Largely, most the US also, now the news coming out of, they understand the situation. The Russians, I think they also said that this recognition, it is an issue which can be done later on, but the first and the foremost is the 40 million Afghan. And I think it is not only the aid which matter, because you can't sustain 40 million people with a foreign aid. You have to some the local and internal thing that Afghan Taliban.
But Khan Saab, you can't do that overnight. That will
I think
take
you
time.
can't do
need
that
to have the
overnight,
proper
but
infrastructure,
at
it takes
least
time.
the 1 billion, the 9+ billion or the $8+ billion which are freezed by the US administration, I think that need to be unfreezed and let the Taliban do. I think at least they can manage their export, import, etc., and they do something for their people, like the health, the education, etc., especially the vital one as the health is concerned, the food is concerned. But I think that at the moment, this what we call it the civilized world, so-called, instead of looking at this issue from a humanitarian angle, they are looking at this issue from a political angle, and they are telling the people that if they have defeated us, now they are begging to us, and they will try to make them surrender politically. I think that's the point where
And that is a very wrong approach, isn't it?
It's a very wrong approach, because it's a matter of, as I said, 40 million people, and as General Saab has rightly
So the Americans
pointed
really
out,
want to,
the
in
poorest
fact,
of the poor
negotiate with
nation.
them from a position of strength this
Yeah,
time.
that's what we are.
Because
it's
we have the money.
Taliban. We are at the position of strength now, and I think, you know, time and again in the last 20 years, the US and the Afghan government, they tried their level best to make them surrender, to try to weaken them, and then let them negotiate peace with the Afghan government.
So
or with the
perhaps
Taliban.
one thing which I've understood, that just to torture the Taliban or their regime for that matter,
They are punishing the
they are punishing the Afghan
people of Afghan.
so
I
that
think.
the Afghan people could put pressure on the current regime,
So
and
no,
things could
definitely
go
when there is
bad
an
to worse.
uprising, they're waiting. Look, the Afghan people, whether we like it or not, they, I think, accepted the return of Taliban. The way if they not welcome the Taliban, at least they did not resist the coming back of Taliban. So it is a sort of acceptance of the people, of the Afghan
Taliban
people.
were always accepted in the rural areas. They are still very much accepted there because people believe in their ideology, basically the Islamic
look, I
ideology.
think this is-
but
this
when
is-
you
this
talk
is-
about one important area, because that really is a concern, not only for us, for everybody, I would say. All those children who were born, let's say 20 years ago, or even they were like 5 years old when the Americans invaded, let's say, Afghanistan in 2001.
2001.
Now those youngsters, I mean 20 to 25 years old, or even younger lot, which is
They
quite
might
a
have
lot,
been
around
5-year-old,
60%.
7-year-old.
Yeah, that's
yes.
what I'm saying. Now those kids are used to these internet gadgets, mobile phone, music for that matter, and so many other things which a normal country or a modern country, I would say, is used to. But over here, certainly there's a change in regime, change in the attitude, mood, and the basic ingredients are also changed. As we call it, the fabric of society, perhaps that is also being changed. Now, you can't do that overnight. Taliban, I think they have realized, because if the Americans could not make it a democratic state in so many years, how can you expect Taliban to, totally convert that into
I think, look,
something
Faisal,
in a matter of months?
This is very strange. Something which is good for you may not be good for me. I think Afghanistan has suffered for 42 years of war. 1, 2. Even Taliban are changed. In 90s, Taliban was having, in one hand, they were having a machine gun, they were having a gun in one hand, a prayer mat in another one. But now the new Talibans are having an M16 in one hand and a smartphone in another hand.
Exactly.
Even when they are praying, they are making videos of their own, I think,
Leaders,
what they are doing. So definitely Taliban are also changed. And that's the reason. But I'm not advocating the case of Taliban. I think that should be clear. I am for the people of Afghanistan, because the worst may come, God forbid, if you people are punishing Taliban for your own, to satisfy your own ego. That's the matter. I think that is what the Prime Minister is saying. And his passionate speech was also for the people of Afghan. It was not for the acceptance of the Taliban government in Afghanistan. So we have to understand, and I think the modern world, especially the so-called civilized world, need to understand that it is a humanitarian issue. And why Pakistan is so much concerned? The reason is, God forbid, if the Afghan government fail, if the Afghan fail, so we fear, we already, as General Saab has pointed out, we already have limited resources. We are unable to feed our own people. We are unable to secure our own people. And God forbid, if there is something bad happen, a civil war-like situation again emerges in Afghanistan. So that will be a nightmare for Pakistan. So that's why Pakistan is so vigorously
And the
pursuing
Taliban, they are being regularly targeted. Recently, you talk about Jalalabad, you talk about
Yeah,
the
in
Kabul,
Kabul, Jalalabad
bombing.
and elsewhere,
Other
yes.
than that, there was another attack. So I think they also understand that this is going to continue. And Jansa, one important area, because it seems that a lot of non-state actors who were anti-Taliban or the adversary of Taliban, they are being taken into account, and they are being either financed, supported, and they are being assigned certain targets to create this kind of a havoc. And interestingly, that is what is happening out there, sir. Suicidal bombing, perhaps bombing in the car or otherwise. Sir, if this phenomenon continues, no matter how much money you pour into Afghanistan, the civil war-like situation seems to be inevitable, sir. Your take?
Yeah, that's very true, because there are forces and there are countries which are supporting those who are opposing the Taliban regime. There's no doubt about it, and you very rightly mentioned those forces. The point is that they also have to realize that if they destabilize Afghanistan and create problems like these, ultimately they also will suffer. This is what exactly happened when 9/11 occurred. Because what they did was that they neglected Afghanistan, created conditions in Afghanistan, which ultimately gave rise to a situation in Afghanistan which could project or radiate the ill effects of that globally. So I think you have to understand that the world today is so sort of interconnected that if you create problems for Afghanistan, especially for the people of Afghanistan who have suffered so much in order to punish the so-called leaders because of your failures, then you will also one day suffer its repercussions. So I think you will not get away with it. So I think this aspect should also be kept in mind. And the worst affected would be also the region apart from Afghanistan itself and its people. Pakistan would be affected, and so would the neighboring countries like Iran and China and Russia. So I think that is why these countries are uniting in order to support Afghanistan. They are not saying that you recognize the government, or they are not praising the actions of the government. They say that let that be the concern of the people of Afghanistan. We are concerned with the humanitarian aspects of Afghanistan. We are concerned with the stability and the conditions of Afghanistan, because they will spill over into the region.
And that is perhaps the million-dollar question, because there are certain forces which really want that there should be some sort of a problem, some sort of a chaos in the region, perhaps to put a check on the Chinese expansion plan, number one. And secondly, sir, the same countries, they want to talk about bringing in peace in Afghanistan. So I failed to understand, Khan Sahab, what exactly is going on. I mean, is this what we call the double standard by book? Or perhaps, saying something on the face of it and saying something behind and then doing something totally different? This is what seems to be going on in Afghanistan, sir. Because I think the way the Taliban have acted so far, nothing could be better than that. Honestly speaking, I mean, I sometimes feel this is a better regime than the previous 4 regimes. 2 of Mr. Hamid Karzai and 2 of Mr. Ashraf Ghani. I mean, there was chaos, there's a problem, they were not settling that who had won. I mean, there was this claim made by Abdullah that he had won the election. There was another claim, and suddenly then, somebody would come in from USA and would sort out issues. But sir, now it seems that everybody is on the same page. Yes, there is a disconnect where the Taliban are forced to have a broad-based government. But my question is, when the Iranians say that you need to have a broad-based government, is there a broad-based government in Iran? Or even in Pakistan, do we have ministers from PMLN or People's Party for that matter, or JUI, just to have that kind of an equilibrium that it should be? It doesn't happen that way, sir. Then why are the Americans or the Western world forcing them so much to have an inclusive government? Even our own Prime Minister. What difference will it make, sir?
I think, first let me say one thing, as you mentioned about the new situation in Afghanistan. On August 15, Taliban took over. I think it was almost a walk in the park for them in Kabul. And there was a report on September 15 that a month without a civilian casualty passed in Afghanistan. So the first month in 42 years where there was no civilian casualty in Afghanistan. I think the people of Afghanistan at least have that sigh of relief that there was no blast, there was no attacks, there was no the militants and military.
It's a new normal.
Yeah, it was a new normal for yes. So that was quite interesting for me when I read that news. As for this thing, I think, Faisal, we have to look into Afghanistan from a bit of different perspective. It's not like Pakistan, it's not like Iran or any other country. I think Taliban agreed in Doha talks that they will not come with a sweeping power. They will not take Afghanistan by force, but they will work for what we call it all-inclusive government, In Pashto, they use the word tol shamula. It means that all will be included. If we translate the word Pashto into English, so it means that all. Tol mean in Pashto it's all. Shamula, all inclusive. All will
Shamil.
be included, yeah, Shamil in this government. So they promised with the world community, they promised with their opponents, whether it was the Afghan government or whether it was the US administration. So now I think they are morally bound to have an all-inclusive government. But one thing which I don't understand is that the way we people are were talking about the all-inclusive government, it is the all-ethnic. It means that there shall be Tajik, Pashtun, Uzbek, Hazara, etc. These ethnic community. But will it be an inclusive government like this Mullah Salam Rahimi? He is the deputy prime minister. He is a Tajik. Like this chief of army staff, head of the army, Fasihuddin, he is a Tajik, etc. So does it mean, but he was a Talib. I think for me, when I was expecting the all-inclusive government, it means that the people of all shades, it means that the people of different political or even sect, ethnic, all background will be included in it. But this is the all-Talib government. Because I don't know why our prime minister was insisting on including the. There were Tajik in the Taliban government. They included Uzbek. They take a very prominent person, Nuruddin Azizi, I think it is his name, from Panjshir Valley. He's a very popular man. He's a very popular businessman. Yes, that means that they
Is he the governor now?
Yeah, he's a minister. He's in the cabinet. He's a full time. And they included one Uzbek from as a health minister, as a deputy health minister. So people are in now. They are in. But what I'm not for the ethnic sort of inclusion in it. I'm for a political or people from jihadi background, people from various areas like Ismail Khan is from the Herat side, like Dostam, etc. I'm not saying that these people shall be included in the government, but the people.
We haven't heard much about Ismail Khan. I mean, though we were told that he has a strength of about 6,000 to 7,000 foot soldiers. Yet without even a single fire he surrendered. Maybe he was also promised that he was going to be given.
I think why Ashraf Ghani, I think the basic reason why Ashraf Ghani failed, the reason was he was mostly in the social media. He was observing his graph up and down while following the social media, like the Facebook, like the Twitter, etc. And now news are
like
coming
General Musharraf, everybody thought that he was going to come back.
He was expecting 22 million people when he was returning from abroad.
That's what I'm saying. So exactly, that is what reality is all about. So I think we have been also joined in by Begum Abdul Saiba, the former Ambassador to United States of America, former Federal Minister. Assalamu alaikum ji.
Assalamu alaikum.
Ma'am, thank you so much for talking to PTV World. And now we have with us General TALAT Masood Saab and Hassan Khan Saab. Now we're talking about the Afghan situation. Ma'am, now it seems that if the Western world is not helping, the regional countries should pull in and should make sure that at the end of the day, sanity, I would say, prevails in Afghanistan, and at least the misery of the people from whichever ethnic group they belong to, that misery should come to an end. There is food security problem, there is this medical issue, there is this health problem growing up, and then on top of that, ma'am, the Western world has stopped the aid. Now, looking at the current scenario, ma'am, what do you see happening, let's say in another 2 to 3 months, if there is a stalemate kind of a position going, and there is no foreign aid coming in, and still confusion prevails within the ranks of the the Taliban, or perhaps all those who are supporting them?
Well, I feel that the Taliban have so far put on a moderate face to their government. They want to engage with the world, and they are fully cognizant of the reality that they need assistance from the world. So if the world does not respond, then the onus will be on the neighboring states of Afghanistan to help them out. And to that extent, Pakistan would be willing and ready to do so.
Pakistan, do you think, ma'am, is in a state that we can do that much for Afghanistan? Because looking at the internal situation, the economic situation, and then there is this new trend of extremism, violence, and attacks on our soldiers, ma'am. Every other day, unfortunately, we're losing men from the FC or otherwise, men in uniform. Let me put it this way, men from the law enforcement agencies.
we can't do anything about the violence, but we can provide Afghanistan with some basic food commodities like rice and wheat, which we have as a surplus. So, to that extent, we can help them.
As far as the food security is concerned, you think Pakistan can pull it? Ma'am, now comes the overall situation, and that is about the narrative of accepting this regime, because I think everybody is following this formula of wait and see. You think this wait and see will continue for a couple of months, ma'am? Because even you also mentioned that, the Taliban, I mean, they've shown a moderate phase. Now, you can't expect them to totally, change 100% or 180 degrees opposite and be very Western. But whatever they have done so far, I think it's very much acceptable, isn't it, ma'am?
Yes, indeed it is. And I think that the world will come around to looking more positively.
All right, ma'am.
And their government of the Taliban continues, I think that the world will start engaging with them.
All right, and you expect that to happen soon, right, ma'am?
Future.
All right. So, I mean, that's a very positive comment, ma'am. Thank you so much for your comments for the show. Now, sir, Begum Abdul Cyber says that Pakistan can, provide them, at least if nothing else, can provide them rice and wheat and the food items perhaps. And that we can do. We have always done that in the past also, sir. But, sir, having said that, because one of the major concern which was there initially, but unfortunately or fortunately, that did not happen. From our perspective, we did not see many refugees like coming in millions and millions. At least there was this estimate that through Chaman there could be about 500,000 people might be coming into Pakistan, and even from the other side, they were expecting as many. Now the point is, sir, that there is not a problem of that magnitude where people are practically dying of hunger. But, sir, this can happen in the future, another month or perhaps even 6 weeks from now. This support as far as food is concerned, sir, that should be there, not only from Pakistan, sir, from Iran, from all the neighboring countries. They're pretty rich as far as food is concerned, sir, or growing these crops are concerned. That can take care of one issue, sir. But do you think, sir, in the future, if things do not go the way it should?
Why not India? They have too much concern for the
Indians,
Afghans.
it's all about talking and investing against Pakistan.
That's what I'm saying, because they were talking
now
too much of Afghans,
this
people
is
of
where
Afghanistan.
exactly they should send. I mean, they can send missiles and they can send bombs and guns. Why not food? But General Saab, this is something of prime concern, because if something happens, sir, this refugee crisis is going to blow Pakistan as well as Iran and the other neighboring states also. Because you can't put that sort of a check where you will not allow humans to enter. So we are not like Europeans, where Hungary would put a check on the Syrian refugees or other countries like that.
You are very right. But I think the expectations from Pakistan would be wrong, because for the fact that Pakistan itself is short of wheat. There is a shortage of wheat. There is a shortage of most of the commodities.
Food item,
I think it is for the international community and those countries which are rich. They must really come forward and start helping Afghans.
Look at the Americans, the amount of wheat they throw in the sea to stabilize the market prices. I mean,
so I think, and they are responsible for what has happened over there. So I think they need to contribute. The West needs to contribute. They have the ability, the financial strength, and so on to do that. And there is no reason why the people of Afghanistan should be punished, even if they think that the policies that are pursued by the Taliban are not up to their standards or in conflict in their interests. It's in conflict with their interests, national interests. But that is another aspect. It's the humanitarian aspect, which demands that the Western world must be more open and definitely go all out to help the Afghan people. Otherwise, there will be a crisis of a magnitude which will spill over not only in Afghanistan, but in the whole of Afghanistan, but in the neighboring countries as well, with very serious impact. So I think these aspects cannot be just overlooked. And then what I would insist, and I think you also have said this, that they must return those money which is lying in the banks of US. It's a $9 billion, I think.
$9.5 billion, sir.
$9 billion is a lot of money. It will immediately sort of help them to sort of restore.
At least it will take care of 1 year.
Yeah, because
especially the vital departments like health, food, etc.
Yeah.
That's the salaries of the people and so much more.
So what Hassan has been saying is absolutely right. So I think we need to reinforce help Afghan people, and that should be the point. And I think the Prime Minister was focusing on that you have to really help the people of Afghanistan. They've gone through such terrible times in the last 42 years. They need and they deserve to get a better treatment from the international world, and you have to be more open towards them, and you should not take a hostile position towards them so that they continue to suffer more, because it is not the people. And even if the people are you are trying to punish the people for your own wrong policies or to take vengeance against the Taliban, I think this is very unfair.
This is very unfair.
I think Faisal, General Sahab, just add me to this situation. Few things. I think there was a historical debacle, I think, that happened in Afghanistan in the month of August. Like, look, almost 400,000 national security forces, which include the police and the Afghan National Army, raised and fed and financed and trained by the world best, I think, military officers or armies, that I think melted away within no time. One, the government, I think, gone in the air within no time. There is no investigation. There are nobody is asking where is the Afghan National Army. Nobody is asking who raised, who trained these officers, who trained these. At least they should have defended only one city. It means that this 300,000+ military trained, financed. Americans are saying that we have invested 2 trillion or 3 trillion.
2.2 trillion.
2.2 trillion
but
of
you know
dollars.
Who got rich?
Let's say
I mean,
2.2 trillions of dollars. Let's say at least they should ask where this $2 trillion of money went. We raised a force of 350,000 strong, equipped with the most, I think, the high tech, what we call it, the killing machine in the world. They were having the air support, they were having the artillery support, they were having all sorts of, and they went away when a man having only a machine gun in his hand, let's say a small arm in his hand. So I think there shall be an investigation instead of just blaming others for it. So this, to me, I don't know, General Saab is well aware of it. If a military fail, let's say, if something happened in the military side, there shall be an investigation. Somebody shall ask the Americans, the American Congress shall ask its journalists.
I think all those who even were
but
killed,
honestly,
all those 2,500 soldiers, the Americans or the NATO soldiers,
nobody is
their families
asking,
should come forward that what was this war for?
No, today nobody is asking for the US, nobody is asking about the ANA, nobody is asking about the Afghan government, etc. Nobody is asking about the NATO involvement in Afghanistan, etc. But everybody is just, Taliban come from where Taliban come? At least this question should be answered. From where Taliban come? How they take over the entire country within a span of few weeks? Taliban were in faraway towns in the month of August, I think.
We used to do so many shows.
And we were not expecting it.
We used to say, okay, it might take some time. Even nobody was expecting that. Yes, they have control over certain areas, but when it comes to the provincial capitals.
Yeah, we were, I mean, even the big cities, we were saying.
Kabul, for example, is one example. But the moment
let me narrate a very interesting story.
Had a meeting and he said, if you remember, to Abdullah and the other two gentlemen, that you go to Doha and you sort out the issue, and then, you know, whatever you decide is going to be acceptable to me. And they were, preparing to go to Doha, and this man fled.
I was part of one of a discussion in the Pakistan top security officers was giving us the background of Afghanistan and the situation. And he said that Afghan militaries are smarter than us. which we couldn't did in 1971. They are doing it now. He said that instead of spreading out the entire army in all areas of Afghanistan, they are gradually focusing on major cities. So he said the Taliban will be, they will face a very tough situation when they try to enter the major cities. Hardly a month before the Taliban took over of Afghanistan, Pakistan top military guy was telling that they have a very good strategy. So where that strategy is gone? So I think instead of punishing the Afghan people for your own weaknesses, it is better, at least the world best nations calling themselves the Americans or the Western people, they at least should investigate that how the Taliban took over. Is it Pakistan or is it the Taliban's fault coming and taking over the entire country, or it is their fault letting them have a walkover in the entire Afghanistan? Where is their trained military officers? Pakistan was telling them time and again that making an army is not a matter of a year or 2 or 3 or 4.
It takes decades and
it
decades
takes
and
decades
decades.
having a military, one officer.
And then you need to have a narrative also.
A narrative
Are
also,
they
and
fighting
having the
against their
people.
own people? I mean, what sort of a narrative is that? But Jalsa, one important area, and that is about, I mean, because Hassan really raised a very important issue. And he was saying that when you have certain expectations from your military, like we have a lot, and they have always proven right because they have defended, they have given their own lives. But sir, recently attack claimed by who? Daesh. Another attack killing XY number of FC soldiers claimed by who? Balochistan liberation
Subnational
or national groups. So this has to come to an end. Either these were the sleeping cells inside Pakistan, sir, or again there is some other force which we all know is India, or perhaps some other intelligence agencies which are supporting them to constantly make sure that Pakistan bleeds. But sir, how long will this continue? Because we all thought that, now peace in Afghanistan means that, at least our soldiers who have given, I think, the maximum sacrifice in the history of this area, I would say. 80,000 people losing their lives. Forget about the financial aspect, that is always there. But sir, we lost around 10,000 soldiers also. And look at the number of officers we lost, sir, during this war on terror.
And the highest ratio of officers to Jawan in
anywhere in
Pakistan,
any battle, sir.
Well,
Because
I
they were
think,
brave and led from the front.
Your question is actually that will the things be better now or not?
But why aren't they getting better?
No, I think it's too early to sort of assess. I would not really come to any conclusion whatsoever because it's only a few weeks that they have been in power. So you can't expect them to really focus on this area so much to the extent that you would not have any problems.
I think they have
But
issues at
certainly
multiple fronts.
your point is extremely valid if things continue the way they do. And Pakistan has already raised this issue with them. And I think they are taking certain measures, but hopefully they would be more effective and not allow these people to operate. You see, they had alliance with these people. The TTP had an alliance with the Taliban of Afghanistan. They still, some of them probably have a soft corner for them. And we have to ensure that even if they do have a soft corner, they should limit it within Afghanistan and will not allow them to, under any circumstances, to use Afghan territory. But I would say that the Taliban leadership is quite cognizant of this and is sensitive to Pakistan's reaction and would respond. And if it does not, then obviously it will have repercussions and will probably, Pakistan will have to take certain other measures if that be the case. So give them a little time. There has to be an improvement. There has to be, and as expected, there is already a very close coordination between the Taliban leadership and the Pakistan military, and we expect that this coordination will bring results.
So one important related question. So we all witnessed what happened in Syria. There was this Western world all, putting the effort together against the regime of Bashar al-Assad, right, sir? Then this man had some sort of a support from the Iranians and the Russians. Sir. Russians came in, and obviously we got to know that the supporters or the so-called the rebels, the American-backed rebels, they were bombed by the Russians, and the Russian, backed rebels were bombed by the Americans. At the end of the day, there was this confusion going on that who is killing who. At the end of the day, again, the people of Syria suffered. But sir, if you want to, whether it is accepted or not liked by the Western world, like a similar regime in Afghanistan, let's put it this way. So don't you think that if we have a certain legitimate threat, erupting from that particular area, we can go and eliminate that, sir, if we have the support of that government? That government is not our adversary anymore, sir. Maybe the previous one was. You think, sir, certain actions could be taken into account?
Well, I would say that I think there should be a greater level of cooperation at the intelligence level. The Taliban are quite capable of trying to, can take care of the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. For them, that is not really such a serious problem, unless they themselves are supportive. And
they also have the political influence over them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that I don't think we should do that, because that would hurt their vanity, that will create problems, and that will be resented, and it could be exploited by other forces like India and others, that Pakistan is trying to dominate Afghanistan, and even trying to sort of get it is so intrusive that it is using its forces. So I would strongly recommend against any action like that.
Not even the drone strikes? Not even the drone strikes?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we should leave it to the Afghan Taliban for the time being, and of course keep on insisting on them, try to give them intelligence support if needed, which is needed, and also try to give them any other support that they need in order to finish or sort of eliminate these forces, and have a better relationship in terms of intelligence, etc., which we already have, but also probably strengthen it more, make them realize the consequences of this also for Afghanistan, apart from. So I don't think we should go to that extent and create problems for them and for us, and also give an opportunity, an opportunity for other hostile forces to sort of capitalize on it.
I think I
Same question.
Totally agree with Channel Saab, and I think it will be, let me use the word stupid of Pakistan if it opt for that option to cross the border and target.
Remember when Pakistan was blamed by the Indian media that they are sending their troops
I think that the Indian media, I think
ill support, and even
Arnab
Arnab Goswami, in one of the interviews said that we have killed, not we have killed, they have killed 22 of your soldiers.
I think the way the level of that is not I think that's not a discussion. I tweet somewhere that I was not expecting that this gentleman is a general material. The way he was talking, the way he was reporting on the war room in Pakistan, or where the Russian chief and the Chinese chief and the Pakistani chief were sitting together. So I think that doesn't deserve, I think, the Indian media, what they're talking about Pakistan and Afghanistan. But the fact is that you rightly mentioned this threat to Pakistan from the anti-Pakistan militant like the TTP and the Baloch insurgents or the Baloch militants. I think already there are reports, Pakistani intelligence agencies are reporting that many have crossed to India, some have been to Iran, Sistan province, etc., and their ranks are now entering into Pakistan, and they are trying to get more recruitment. They are trying to, I think, because they have reorganizing themselves. So for Pakistan, instead of having full-scale kinetic operations, I think that's not an option anymore. I think we need to more focus on joint intelligence operations like police, APSI, militaries, etc., all the intelligence agencies. I think it's the time now to focus on.
Last quick 10-second comment. Do you think some sort of a political settlement can take place, because there were hints?
I think there are reports that government is talking with the Baloch insurgents.
Yes.
They are talking within, and I think the door is also window. I will not use the word door, but the window is also getting opened for the TTP, because Taliban have also somehow they are trying to negotiate.
Well, they can see their future also.
I think that's
TTP,
but I think talking to the TTP, to me that is so far. I don't think so that we will match.
Sir, at the end of the day, whatever happened in even Sri Lanka, the last resort
was
killing is not an
option. You can't. I think
you'll
eliminate somebody by killing the
10,
people.
you'll kill 20, they'll kill 20, and this is at the end of the day,
they will have 40
your own
more.
people are suffering. But anyway, Khan Sahab, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure having you, sir. And that's all we have for this up. I'll see you inshallah on Tuesday tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.